Hey everyone, I am really excited to launch. This is the first podcast for Hustle to Hero. We are the entrepreneur's journey for reentry, community veterans, and first responder. And I'm really, really excited to tell you about my new best friend, Jack Johnson. We met, I don't know, like a few weeks ago, Jack, right, on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Yeah, we've talked at least 5 different times since then. So Jack is an attorney that specializes in the prison. So he's also a prison consultant.
Wait, I
He's
have to
in.
stop you there. I'm not an
Yep.
attorney.
Oh, that's right. You're not an attorney anymore. Okay. Now, all right. I'm going to let Jack introduce himself because, and then that'll be great. But you are from the Pittsburgh area, Philadelphia.
Philadelphia area, we could say that, yes.
Close enough to me. Jack, tell everybody about you.
I had a career in criminal justice. I worked for the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Prior to that, I worked as a probation and parole officer. Have a little bit of a military background, U.S. Army. Grew up basically blue collar, wrong side of the tracks. Could very well have ended up in prison myself for some of the things as a young adult. But there's something called desistance. Sooner or later, everybody sees the light, and I ended up having a career in federal government, always in case management capacities, working directly with incarcerated people at the federal level. Did 23 years, retired at actually age 50. Started collecting my pension, and it's been 13 years since I'm retired. Upon retirement, I started a private LLC company doing consulting where I support attorneys, federal defenders all around the country, testify in court, do a lot of work with juvenile lifers out of the DC area. And about a year ago, I felt moved to take my skill set to the nonprofit sector and got together with some like-minded technical professionals and started a nonprofit 501c3 called the Federal Prison Education and Reform Alliance. Have a BOP, retired Bureau of Prisons medical doctor, psychologist, case manager, just people of various technical skill sets. And we support people in prison, and we also support the broader justice community. We train all over the United States on federal prison issues. I'm going out to San Diego this month. Going down to the Carolinas, Virginia. We'll be all over. We go all over and do training on federal prison issues. That's my passion, is federal prison reform. And everybody who follows the news or the federal prison space knows that there's a crisis in our federal, prison bureaucracy at this moment in time. So I think that's pretty much framing everything.
I like that. So, Jack, now we're going to talk about your nonprofit as well. But when I'll just be right up front, man. When I found Jack, I said I came from, one of the conferences, and I'm like, I got to find, like a consultant to be able to help me. Because this is like a jigsaw puzzle and spider webs all intertwined together. You just go down the rabbit hole trying to figure out how can you get into the systems and how can I best help the reentry community, right? And I told you, I got into, I was led to the reentry community because of Kairos Prison Women's Prison Ministry. And when I got in there, I'm like, Lord, if anybody needs it, these people do. So I grew up believing that there is no excuses of why you can't have your own business if that's what if that's what it is. These people, they come out, they're stuck in minimum wage. And even before they go in and while they're in there, they have such low self-esteem of thinking there is nothing that they can do. I want to break that. I want to break that awful feeling for them and give them hope and show them that they can have a business, and it'll be a ripple effect with their families because their families will do better. So tell me, Jack, like the prison programs right now, would you have a little bit of feedback on perhaps what we could do better for those programs? How can we help the inmates, where are we going wrong? How can we help them?
Well, listen, if you follow criminal justice, if you follow prison issues, you'll understand that the United States is the incarceration nation. I mean, there's all kinds of stark statistics that fluctuate, but basically, we incarcerate more people than most countries in the world. I think at one point we had 5% of the world's population and 25% of the world's prison population. Now, that didn't start overnight. People that remember the crack epidemic and the truth in sentencing laws and tough on crime in the 80s really abolished progressive, programs and laws like parole. At the federal level, they used to have parole at 1/3 of a sentence. A life sentence would have a 10-year parole eligibility, believe it or not, and 30 years mandatory parole. Well, when they abolished the parole system at the federal level, truth in sentencing just means determinate sentences. People went from having 1/3 parole eligibility to serving 85% of the full term. So it became very draconian. The numbers increased. The prison industrial complex built out, and for decades, the federal government was on a construction boom to accommodate all these laws, mandatory minimums, and it was just it's been a disaster, to be honest with you. And so, limited resources, prison systems, all prison systems, including the federal government, the resources go into confinement and incapacitation, and treatment takes a second, back seat. And then you have, programs. You'll hear about programs, progressive programs. I can say by and large, programs have failed in this country. There are good programs here and there, but it's not for mass and not for volume. And, sometimes the staff just don't have their hearts in delivering programs. And so I look at someone like yourself, kind of like an outsider, but also the entrepreneurial aspect, the professionalism. I believe there's a lot that the private sector can offer prison populations. They're just dysfunctional bureaucracy, state and federal government. Look at the headlines, talk to people incarcerated. They're failed systems, to be honest with you.
Yeah. No, and I spent, first of all, the business that actually does all the heavy lifting for Wings of Growth is primarily focused on raising capital, raising funds, doing fundraisers so that we can help the reentry community, veterans, and first responders. My business in a box does all the heavy lifting, right? Now, it's been around since 2010. And I know that how hard, the various different programs. So just getting into like talking to some of these people where, for your example, the work supervisor inside has good intentions, but her or his hands are tied into some different things. And I'm like, it's so frustrating to me, but I have to be the patient one. So I can imagine you've lived it your whole life.
Yeah, and there's all those natural impediments. Like, you want to go into a prison, that sounds simple, but obviously with the security issues and the background clearances, and it's just, and then what goes on in prisons and the lockdowns and the critical incidents, and it's very difficult to navigate the bureaucracy for outsiders that come in and do good inside the walls and the fences. That's just, you mentioned Kairos. I always loved Kairos. I worked in a medium security prison in New York where Kairos came in the summertime for a whole weekend. They camped outside, and they did come in and do programs and talks and music programs in and out. But a lot of that progressive nature like that, like Kairos didn't come into our prison in the end of my career, but like a lot of that more progressive programming, I would say from the 70s into the 80s, that all went away. They're doing very limited, in my opinion, progressive type programs and community interaction.
Yeah. I just got back from my first conference at, and it doesn't even matter what conference it is, but my first conference in Florida. And I had no idea what to expect. I knew, hey, listen, I'm going to be an exhibitor. Here's my $3,000 and I'm going to learn something, right? And I did. I joined every single workshop that was anything reentry. And I got a big mouth. When I'm there and I'm paying money, I'm going to get in front of somebody, right? So I just started asking questions and I said, "Hey, listen, this is who I am. This is what I support. And I'm looking for some entrepreneurial programs so that I can offer to these people." And everybody loved the ideas of the entrepreneurial programs because nobody, if you don't have, a high school diploma, using that as an example, or a GED or something like that. Now there are options of trying to get that inside a prison, yes, but at the same time, we have to grab these people because they've got a short window where, yes, they do. They try to go get minimum wage jobs because that's all they're going to get, people. That's all they're going to get. For right now, that's what they're going to get. And then I'm like, listen, I encourage them to keep those minimum wage jobs and work on their business while they're doing it. My first success story, she was a paralegal before going in, incarcerated for about 3 years or so. And I'm like, listen, let's get you a research business. So today, Jack, she's actually doing research on Fiverr. She is hustling and she's getting, like $100 per gig. And she's almost ready to quit her minimum wage job.
That's awesome. Entrepreneurs should know that, believe it or not, GED is probably one of the only like heavy duty focused programs that people will obtain their GED in state and federal correctional environments. So most people if they have the aptitude, are coming out with GEDs. Something the entrepreneurial world might not know, and that we're always trying to encourage in our conversations with the community, is that there are workforce tax credits to higher target populations, and a felon is a target population. So it makes good business sense to hire felons because you get a tax subsidy during the training period. And I draw back, even back in the 80s, I worked in probation and I was in charge of the work release program. I would go to the jail. I would bring people from the jail for interviews in the local community. And there was a factory there they had a hard time getting workers, and they used to love the people in prison. They were coming out for the work release. One, the prisoner loves to get outside the prison.
Absolutely.
Two, the wage is subsidized, and they're on a tight rope, and then even when people are released on supervision, they're on a fairly tight rope for compliance. And so they make incarcerated people make great employees for various reasons, and people don't understand that.
That's good. That's awesome. So I want to talk a little bit about your nonprofit. That was one of the exciting things that we kind of dove right into. You taught me so much in our first call. I mean, it was just amazing.
We are unique because, whereas I had mentioned to you, the reentry space is fairly crowded. A lot of people have a passion who serve time. They come out, they get into the reentry space. They want to help. Family members that went through this and witnessing their loved ones in prison want to help. So the reentry space is crowded. What a void is, and it's a difficult void to fill unless you have like the technical skill sets, is we help people inside prison navigate the system, within the policy to accomplish goals in a non-adversarial way. So we really do Corelink's email correspondence with people and, make them aware of policies and their rights and the possibilities. So we try to foster good treatment relationships with staff and just help people get things accomplished inside. But also on a separate level, with the training that I've done historically, we take our group around and we train federal defenders, federal judges, federal probation officers all over the country. And some of it we do for defender organizations, local bars, administrative office of the U.S. courts, who does the coordinated training for federal defenders. So, we hit this two ways. We want to educate the community so they can do a better job serving their constituents and clients. Even politicians, we interact with the Judiciary Committee. Recently, we were invited with the Department of Justice invited us to do a Zoom on the prison ombudsman law that was passed last year. GAO interviewed us on the First Step Act. So we feel like we have our hands in a lot of different pots, so to speak. But again, we're new stage development. Obviously, one thing good with us, rather than totally relying on donations and things, we do have a 4-fee service structure. So we engage people that can afford it along with our pro bono work. And we actually can raise money on our 4-fee service to grow our programs and services. And so I feel it's a good business model. And I feel, in the short time we're an organization, we've gotten a lot of things accomplished, impacted a lot of families. And I feel like we're one of the movers in the country for prison reform.
I like it, Jack. So now we talked a little bit about, if you don't mind, just talking a little bit about day centers, right? Because I think that is such a, and I'm definitely, as soon as I got off with you, man, I Googled it. I got it. I've tried to find the day centers that are around me, and I'm going to plow into it, and I'm going to try to make this work.
That's where the feds are gravitating, the day reporting centers. And one of our initiatives as a nonprofit is I want to do a pilot comprehensive center, which it's actually a day center and overnight center. When I say comprehensive, it's also like a residential place. But the concept of the day center is hopefully a diversionary center where people come for clinical counseling, vocational training, learn how to be an entrepreneur, because, you can learn to be an electrician, but if you don't know how to run a business,
right,
you need that holistic approach to everything. And then you have the clinical issues, you have the substance abuse issues, you have the PTSD issues, you talk about veterans and things. And, it's multifaceted. So a day treatment center is just that. A day center addresses holistically all aspects. I'll say all the criminogenic aspects. Diversion, halfway in, you'll hear that term, people that are halfway into prison, and then people coming out halfway out. Sometimes it's a sanction center where they're on supervision, they're kind of on the edge of being violated, boom, they do this at the center. And so it's more economical than residential. It still has accountability to it, but I feel like in the pilot we're trying to develop, we're going to draw upon community resources and do a lot of good Department of Labor vocational programs. And it's just a no-brainer, and it fits great with your model.
Yeah. I appreciate that, Jack. I appreciate that. So nothing runs itself. Nothing runs itself. It all takes money. It all takes time. You got to get paid. I got to get paid. Our teams need to get paid. And we have to be effective. And so that's why I'm just trying to surround myself with people that have already done it. And all right, what would you do? What advice would you give me? And I'm all ears. And that's why I so much appreciated us and our first conversations. And now tell me, I think you are waiting on a grant. You're working for a grant right now, or working on a grant, right? Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. And, you made me think as you were talking, because in this space, in this nonprofit space, the grant process ordinarily is poke me in the eye with a needle, and then the regulation, and then the what you have to do to maintain the grant, the reporting requirements. And so we really are such new stage and don't have a grant writer that we're staying away from government grants and federal grants, and then you have the philanthropists maybe that have, not as regimented and everything. And so that whole world is not for us yet, as being so new. Maybe there will be a time. The grant we're actually applied for is what's called an LSA grant. There's a casino in our bordering county, and part of the agreement to bring the casino in was that they would have money available for community development. And so we're lucky enough to be on the county next to a casino. There's not a lot of strings attached with the money. The commissioners in the county have sponsored us because I'm with another nonprofit, and we service the county jail. We set up their reentry coalition, and we go into jail and deliver programs and services with a separate nonprofit. So the county sponsored us, my new nonprofit, and the other one that I was associated with locally, to obtain money for all the preliminary architecture, drawing, site
Mhm.
work, things like that. And it's a two-part phase. If we get approved for phase 1, phase 2 will help us with the building development and things like that. And so hopefully that all comes in together in the next month. We should hear it in March if we're approved. And even if we're
Awesome.
not approved, we'll fund it a
Right.
different way.
That's
That's the
right.
bottom line. I mean, it's great if we can. Something I guess I'd like to mention
Yeah.
is there's a nonprofit that's different called Social Purpose Corrections. I'm not sure if I talked to you about Social Purpose Corrections. They're a company. They allege, and I believe them, that they're the only like 501c3 nonprofit company that runs prisons. And
Oh,
so we had a good meeting with them, and I look at them in the long run, maybe there's some synergy there with facility development, but you might want to check out Social Purpose Corrections
yeah.
because there's something
I,
new. See, I look at privatization as a cancer, the private prison industry.
mhm.
I just do. And now the
Okay.
peripheral, I say metastases, charging for the phones and the music and
Yeah.
the pads, and it's infiltrated everything, and it's just, it grows and it grows. But there's a whole prison industrial complex. I feel that it shouldn't be for profit. We should not have profit prisons. So I like
Right.
that concept of a nonprofit prison
I'm going to check it out, Jack.
organization.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, Jack, I'm going to so maybe like in a month's time, we'll get to celebrate you got the grant. And if not, we'll also celebrate what's going down the second phase to your, day reporting center. So that is awesome. Jack, I really appreciate you. I am so, so happy to call you friend and advisor. Honestly, you are so smart. I just value what you've got in that brain of yours, and I appreciate you.
Well, thank you so much.
You guys, bye for now. Thank you to joining us to the Hustle to Hero podcast.